Hi, welcome to episode 38. This one we titled Think Like a Designer, I think. I think that's the
Yeah.
title of it. And we're going to tap into Sunny's vast knowledge of being a book designer. This is going to help you as illustrators. It helps us approach the project differently, already thinking of what the designer needs from us. So mainly as Sunny talking, and I'm going to be like, just giving 2 thumbs up when I agree. Here we go.
Okay. Yeah. So I worked as a book designer for quite a while. Well, I did. And I was also an illustrator, but I want to approach this episode like from my experience working with illustrators as a designer. And then maybe also Olga can pitch in with some of her experience working with designers as an illustrator. Because typically for me, when I worked in self-publishing, when I was an illustrator, I was always the designer. So I just realized this, I've never had experience working with someone else preparing my art for printing. I've always had to do, I've not always done the whole thing. So it's kind of, I don't have the same experience that Olga's had working with other people, other designers.
And you were also the one taking the illustrations from someone else
Yeah.
and putting them in
Yeah. Yes.
making
So
the book.
I've only ever had experience really as the designer for myself or for others in preparing the book for print and publishing. So if I had to think of the most important thing, oh, were we gonna like talk about ourselves?
Thinking that too.
We're just gonna jump right in. Why don't
We're
we go?
just
We
jumping
can
right
circle
in.
back. It's
Nobody wants to
fine.
know what the heck we're doing.
So Olga, what have you been up to?
What a tease. Here's the information you're going to need. But nah, let's just wait.
Yeah, the most important thing you need is, oh wait, you can wait.
I am just illustrating. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I got a book deal and I am just up to here illustrating. There's so many characters, and every second that I have free, it's a very tight deadline. So that's it. I mean, there's a few stuff going on submission for myself, but yeah. Then so this book gets done, I can't even think of the next project. I just need to get it this one
Yeah.
done. It's nice. I like it. I'm enjoying it, but it's a lot of work.
You got to
And
focus. Well, and your turnaround was really short. So
that's what it
you're
is.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, that means you don't have any time for any other things. Yeah.
Right. Except maybe planting trees once in a while, like yesterday. Yeah, if you see my energy level super low today, it's because yesterday I gave myself a day of rest. And I said, I am going to give myself such a beautiful day. I cannot be indoors illustrating. I am going to be out there doing, taking care of my garden. Well, I planted it's hard to say, 3 trees with a shovel by myself, and then dug out a little a garden. And I am so sore this morning. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy. At this age, I can't be doing that stuff like a weekend warrior. Like I don't exercise at all or do anything all through the week, but I am
Just
going to
jump
move the
in.
world on a Saturday.
Jump in with a shovel and get to work. I
Right.
couldn't. There's no way I could do that. I'm at the point now where I have to like plan, you know, in small chunks, like what I'm gonna do. I can't just there's no way I could plant 3 trees. Digging a hole is like one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
To like dirt is unforgiving. I don't know.
Yeah. It feels good at the moment. And honestly, I feel great. I'm like, I have done something. I feel like I don't know, like I've
Yeah.
done something for myself. But later on, I'm regretting every second of it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that was a bad idea. My fingers hurt, my ears hurt, everything hurts.
Your ears.
And
If your ears hurt, you were doing it wrong.
and then I'm like, and my idea was, sure, I'll work in the yard all morning. By the nighttime, I'll go ahead and work on the book. Oh my book. And no, I
Yeah.
couldn't.
Yeah.
I did very little last night. So I did take, I think I've been putting like 12 hours a day to stay on track with this deadline. Yesterday, I only did like 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, now I gotta, after recording today, I have to work on that to
12
make up
hours
for
is a
it.
lot.
It's a lot of characters in that book.
Yeah.
That's it for me. I got, yeah, trees and books.
Well, me, this whole month was a really busy month because my son graduated from basic training AIT. So we went to go see him. And I knew that was going to take up a lot of our month. And it did. But it's the first time we've traveled in a while. Before COVID. Like we haven't
Wow, yeah.
Well, we haven't flown actually in longer than that, but but it was really cool and fun, but it was also exhausting going through the airports and but we got to see him, and so that was really cool. And then he got to come home and visit, and really, yeah, that my whole month was kind of focused on that because I was like trying to get my kids, they're not kids anymore, they're like practically adults, like make sure they were ready and make sure the house was ready for us to leave for like a week. And so that took up like the week before. And then
you were like, this is the food the cats eat.
I did.
And this is how I'm like, the cats are not going to die. They're going to eat their food.
They're so
You were
picky.
so
You don't
micromanaging.
understand. My cats are so picky. My kids aren't picky eaters, but my cats are. So I had to do I did a chart of the foods they'll eat. You know, this is Momo's breakfast and this is Charlotte's breakfast. Here's Momo's dinner, Charlotte's dinner. And it helped though, because like all their food's in one box, and they eat wet food and dry food, but the wet food, they're like, well, each of them will only eat like certain flavors and brands. They're terrible. I've created this though.
Cats.
Yeah, it's my fault. And then yeah, so I made sure there was like a list of contacts and instructions for all gone, and it worked. They did great. And the house was standing when we came back and looked the same. Everything was fine. Everyone ate. I don't know why that's so important. Why is that so important as a mom? You're like, I gotta make sure everybody eats. Everyone's got to be fed. That's like the first thing on the list.
No one can starve on my watch.
Yeah, no one will. There's always got to be enough food. Yeah, so and it was really cool because we were in the middle of nowhere in Missouri, but I got to go to a Buc-ee's for the first time, and I've been hearing about them. And yeah,
that was your first time. I didn't know that was your first time.
I had never been. Have you been? Have you seen? Okay, yeah, I'd never seen it.
When we traveled to Florida, we always stopped.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've heard about them from all kinds of places and different people going there, and so I was excited. That was the most exciting, not most, but part of the
that was the most exciting part of the trip.
Second most exciting part of the trip. So
wow,
that was fun. And then it was just kind of recovering from that, and I had plans to draw, and I have tried to draw several times but like I noticed like when I really struggle with if something is going to happen, like a major event, I can't focus on anything else. Like my brain will not, it's like, I did try, I would sit down and I would do sketches, but my brain is like, oh wait, you need to make that list for when you leave. Oh wait, you need to do this, and it just will not, it will not let me focus on other things. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna not worry about it until this is done, and then I'll hop back on. So yeah,
that gets better.
So March
used to have that issue a lot.
Yeah, and then we have graduation coming up too, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to even. My brain's not gonna let me think about other things.
We have graduation. Not your last one. Mine is graduating this year with yours. It's This is cool that we have the same kids.
Yeah,
you got two extra.
A little different. Yeah, we're a little. But yeah. So that's all that's been going on with me. I don't really have anything major. Like some nice things. Some of the books one of the books I designed has gotten a couple awards, which is really cool.
Oh, good.
And it's really neat to see the thing you worked on, do well, I guess, or get acknowledged. It's cool. But that's pretty much all all I've been doing. So
It's
yeah,
funny how designers don't really get their names
no,
are in there, but they're not,
no, yeah,
you know what I mean? They're not known sometimes. And it's just like, wow, they put a
yeah,
lot of work into it. And it's just, it
yeah.
doesn't get the, you know, you hear the illustrator, you hear the author, you maybe the publisher, but not really the designers and the people that are working in it. And they do a lot of work to make it look good.
And they kind of mold the, they make sure the book is on track from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like they're probably, you may not even, I don't know when you start hearing from them in traditional publishing, but usually they're just making sure your art will fit within the specs. They're making sure that the text will fit on the page when you're submitting the sketches or the art. They're making sure, so they're kind of starting, they should be starting from the beginning in the concept phase all the way to the final art phase.
They're
But
choosing the fonts that they're going to use that's going to
mm-hmm.
look good, or that it look that's going to look good with the art style or with the feel of the book. There's a lot of choices that they're making, decisions
Yeah,
that they're making
I
behind the scenes.
joke that's like 90% of a designer's job is just looking at fonts. It really is. And because you have to choose the font for the title, you have to, or fonts, you have to choose the fonts for the interior, and then you have to choose the font for the copyright page, and then you have to make sure that the font you chose for a title, does that work on the spine? You know what I mean? Like you're just kind of, so a lot of time, sometimes all of those things don't work the same ways. You may have to find a different font for the spine if the title font doesn't work there.
I have to
Like
say,
that.
I have to call a difference here. You were asking how, at least this is what I have seen in my experience in traditional, and a little bit of experience that I had before in self-publishing. So in traditional, you're working with the designer or art director, if you want to. Some they go by art director and book designers. I don't know when they choose or what the titles mean. I've seen both, but you're like, as you're doing the illustrations with the sketches for that, and then in self-publishing, almost like sometimes you come in at the end when all the illustrations are done, they just hand you
Sometimes, yeah.
illustrations that are done, and you're like,
Yeah.
somehow I got to make this fit with all of this,
Yeah.
as opposed to working at the same time, making changes, figuring out, hey, let's leave space here for this font here, or I mean, for the text here.
Mm-hmm.
The colors of the backgrounds could be a little lighter, could be,
Yeah.
cooler, warmer, or let's switch it out. And it's actually someone giving you feedback on your work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's someone to bounce idea, like just an idea, like on the book that I'm working is like, hey, can you help me choose a pattern for this carpet or for this rug or something? What do you think would work best? If I
Yeah.
need someone to bounce ideas from,
Yeah.
that helps a lot. Their feedback is
And
it's amazing.
that's ideal. That's the best
Yeah.
way to work. Yeah. And a lot of times in self-publishing authors, that's the other thing that's interesting in I didn't really mean to like differentiate between the two, but it is different. In self-publishing, the author is the one who's funding everything, so that you
Mhm.
are working with the author primarily. And then also if it's a if they planned things well, you're also working with the illustrator. But very often you're just working with the author who has the finished art and hoping it fits, or you have to make it fit. And then you have to make the text fit. But the last two books I did, they were, I mean, I noticed I was getting more and more people that were working with me from initial sketch
Mhm.
to final. And I think that part of that was I was choosing the projects better. I had a little more flexibility to say no to ones that I knew were not in a that would have, because it actually, to me, it requires more work if you get the finished art and then you have to make the text fit. If the art is not, if the illustrator didn't plan the text
Right.
well, it's
Of course.
there's a lot more jumping through hoops, and sometimes I've even had to edit the art to make the text fit
Right.
because the illustrator couldn't, or they're gone, or they don't have. sometimes the author doesn't even have contact with them after.
Right.
It's crazy. There's a lot of different scenarios.
And it's also because of the money, since you're saying like since
Yeah.
they are funding the project, they might have enough money for the illustrations, but they don't have enough money for the designer yet. So these
Yeah.
illustrations might be like 2
Yeah.
years old, 3 years old
Yeah.
until they get enough money to pay for the designer, and that illustrator's long
They're
gone in the
gone. They're working on other
project.
stuff.
Yeah,
And they probably don't, and they may not have money to get edits.
yeah,
So they may have spent their budget on the art and then they can't pay for more edits. And then they're lucky then they've only budgeted for the designer. So it's yeah, a lot of it is control influenced by funding, how much they can afford or what they planned for, what they budgeted for. When you're working with a publisher, they've already planned at the book to start a certain way, and everyone comes in at their specific times. Everyone like works together as a team, and that's ideal. Like that would be the best way.
So the information that we're going to give out in this episode is going to help the illustrators make the job of the designer easier, which makes you a better illustrator, because it's like, okay, you understand that a book is part of a project, a group project, right? So the easier you can make it for someone else, the better it will be for everyone, for the book, and you are more.
And
it just shows
it's
that
easier
the whole
for
project.
you to it makes your job easier too, because if you're submitting things that are not following these steps, if you're not following these steps, then you may have to go back and edit or redraw or redo things. So so the most important thing I think for the book is the cover. The cover is the first thing you see. The cover is what sells the book. The cover, it has to grab people's attention. And a lot of times that's, especially in self-publishing, that is not that's an afterthought. The cover is an afterthought, and a lot of self-publishing authors will think, oh well, we can just plan an interior page to use for the cover, which is possible. You can do that, but I don't think that's a good way to approach the cover. The cover should encompass what the story, you want it to convey a message. And if you're just taking something, there may not be anything from the interior that would work to convey the message you want to show what the book is about.
You also don't want it to look exactly like the page in the interior. It could be a scene from it. It could be a scene, but
You can
it has to be
crop,
working for the cover. It has to be bigger.
Well, and it has to, well, this will come later. Well, I mean, we're going to cover this in a second, but it has to leave room for the title. And the way, like the way you plan an interior page is not the same way you would plan a title page. You want, I mean, the cover, you want the title page is something different, but you want the cover to have room for the title. And so it's just the odds of you getting a decent page, interior page that will leave room for the title, convey your message, look decent as a cover are really slim. That like, it's just like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you do that. Like you really should pay. And that's the other thing. In self-publishing, illustrators I charged this amount for a cover. Front cover and back cover wraparound were different prices. And so I think a lot of authors try to save money by using an interior page, and then they don't have to pay for a cover.
But the changes that have to happen to that illustration to become a cover should acquire another charge. It's not like you're just picking a page and putting it in there and putting the title on top of
stuff. Oh, did you hear that?
No,
I heard that.
What is that?
I didn't put myself out of airplane mode or do not disturb. I need to do not disturb. 1 sec. So there, I fixed it. Before I talk about the title, there's one other thing. Oh, when you think about your cover, you want to look at other books that are on the market that are similar to the book you're working on, just to see how their covers look and what other picture books or middle grade or whatever you're working on, looks like in the categories you're working in. And I'm not saying you have to copy them, but this is just showing you what you're going to be sitting next to, either online or in person or whatever, and just to see if your book would stand out or stand up with the other books in that category. But you also want to look at one, how the book looks, to size, to scale in person, to regular scale, but also as a thumbnail online, because a lot of times people will not think about how it looks small. And if your book is just like a tiny thumbnail, let's say on like Barnes and Noble's website, along with another 100 books in that category, you want to be able to, if you want it to stand out, you don't want it to, get lost with the other books.
Most illustrators don't have to do the title unless they're like, it's a hand lettering, but for, I guess, graphic designers, or if you're doing it all, make sure that the title text, the font is easy to read. Like, don't go too fancy. If you go fancy, some of them are like really difficult to read.
Yeah.
Sometimes simple is better.
Sorry, one second, I get a drink. I'm talking too much.
That okay.
Is true.
You know I'm going to interrupt you at some point, and then I give you time to drink. I can't stay quiet.
No, but that is true. Typically, as an illustrator, you shouldn't have formatting the book and being a book designer should not be expected of you as an illustrator. Sometimes in self-publishing, the author just automatically assumes that you can do it, and if it's not something you're comfortable, or no, it's not something you're confident with, then really you should say no, I don't want to be the book designer. Like, you should hire someone who has experience in that area.
Or it's a separate fee.
Oh, it always is a separate fee. Yeah. My fee for illustrations was separate from my book design fees. Yes. So
as an illustrator, when you're starting the cover, you want to know the dimensions and all that. You're gonna
you need to know the and this is for the interior as well, but for the but this, I guess we're still talking about cover here. Yeah. You want to know the book size. So if someone tells you that your book is, or if you plan for the book to be like 10 by 10 or 9 by 9, which is a square book, that doesn't mean that you're going to draw and plan for the cover to just be 10 inches by 10 inches square. You need to add the bleed. You need to add, if it's going to be a wraparound cover, you need to be able to add the spine and the back cover. So technically your book would be 2 squares side by side with the spine in the middle. But if you're working in self-publishing, you have to go download the template from wherever the book is being printed. So before you even plan the cover, you should get a template for the cover from the printer. And the same goes for traditional. Your publisher should provide you with the specs and the measurements for your cover or a template.
Which is, in traditional, we always get that template. And it's incredibly useful, because then you're like, okay, the jacket, for example, the flaps start here. The spine is here. So I know to avoid putting anything in those little corners where I know it's going to bend. You don't want, important things to go bend out. Excuse me. They even tell us where the title is going to be. Now, when we're submitting sketches, you can play around with that. You're like I always submit a sketch with the title in my ugly handwriting, just kind of like the title here and the lines for, like the credit lines.
The bylines.
Yeah, bylines. I just make a line or just write down the name, just to show it could be here, it could be on the side, we can go here, we can, just to give ideas. Then the designer comes back and says, no, we're going to go with that, but we're going to put the title here, or or we like your idea, let's go with that. But yes, getting the template, like you say, you should ask for it. If not,
And that's a good point. Typically in self-publishing, you don't usually have a book jacket if you're working with Amazon or Ingram Sparks, but if you're working through a publisher overseas, printer overseas, then a lot of times you can afford to get a jacket. And so that, yeah, your template for your book jacket is going to be very different from the book cover template. So
You have some
that's,
questions that you got. I love that.
yeah.
We have
And
some
then
questions from
I hear that, well,
listeners.
I hear these often. I've heard these before. Should you do your cover first or last? And so ideally, I would love to do it last, but that's usually not the scenario that happens. It depends on a lot of things as to when do they need the cover by. A lot of times they need the cover for marketing before you're even done with the book. So and this is also, as a designer, I've had this happen. Like, they asked me to do the cover before before the interior art is even completed, because they want to be able to start putting it places and marketing it and advertising it. So but yeah, ideally I would love to do it last, because then you have a better feel for the book. I don't know how you feel, Olga.
Yeah, no, I usually do have to give it before the entire book, of course, for marketing reasons. But when you're doing sketches, like I already start thinking about the possible uh, book cover ideas for it. But yes, most of the great ideas come when you're like halfway through the book,
Yeah,
because you already know these characters, you have been drawing them, and as you're drawing them from page 1 to like the middle of the book, um you already know how they feel. That you're drawing them so much, so often, that you can draw them already without having to look at the reference page so often. So yes, I love if we have a little bit more time for the cover, because more ideas come up. There's a bunch of times that I have a bunch of sketches and a bunch of ideas that I submit, and then we're like, that drawing is so cute. I would look so good if we put it on the title page, or let's put this, or I want to use this in the book somehow because it's such a cute
yeah,
scene. That we end up sticking it somewhere that, usually it's the title page where you have extra room, or the end papers or something.
yeah,
But yes, I
yeah.
agree. It's a little bit easier, because it's like a summary of what the book is about. And if you're not there yet, how would you know? Obviously, you have read the book, but you haven't felt the characters
Yeah,
as you're drawing them and they come
yeah,
to life.
yeah. Um, the we already kind of talked about this, but well, not really, I guess. I think I said earlier, leave plenty of room for the title, but a lot of people are like, well, I left plenty of room. It's like, well, not no, you didn't really, because like
Plenty of room.
yeah, my idea of plenty of room may be different than the illustrator's idea of plenty of room, because they a lot of times don't take into account the bleed, and then the margins, the safe zone, where you cannot put text past that. So you need to know what your typically margins are, like half an inch, but I like, to be on the safe side, it's nice to go like 3/4 an inch or an inch into the book, so into the interior, I mean into the, I don't know, what am I, away so the safe zone is just the area where they just don't want you to get too close to the edge of where the book will be, that the cover will
Correct.
be cropped or folded over, because they don't want that to accidentally, get cut. And you have those on your interior pages too, but on the title, I mean on the cover, it's a little bit bigger, because you've got a little more room for, they want a little more room for margin for error. So I say leave 1/4 to 1/3 of the cover for the title. But that's also taking into account how much space you have within your safe zone.
I
And
have
that's
to
a
say
little,
something.
1/3 is a little generous, but anyway, yeah.
And I don't know why this came to mind now when you said this, and it's not really related to what you're saying, but I have seen cover designs, even from people that kind of submit for critiques. One thing, like when you mentioned, we're going to be looking at these covers from very small. You don't want it to be a lot of little items. Even if in the book you have a lot of little items, and I do little items often, like I'm known for doing living rooms with a bunch of stuff and life. You know, you have a baby, even my baby book. Where is my book? Oh yeah, I took it for someone. It's not behind me. You know, all the baby stuff that was in it and other books that I'm illustrating that have life. But you want the main items to be large enough that you can see. But I have seen that you have a lot of characters, for example, and they place little characters here and there, like almost like spots. That doesn't work well in a cover. I think it needs to be one cohesive, large illustration with plenty of room for the title to show. Yeah, because if not, you just have a busy thing of nothings that you can actually see, you know.
And it's about being able to focus on the main character or on the cover itself, because if you have too much going on and it's too busy, there's gonna be no focal point.
And then on top of that, you have the logo and then
the publisher's logo and the ISBN number. And I mean, those are, I don't know if you have to really, well, you do need to plan for it in
I do plan,
traditional, and just really, you just need to know what size the ISBN number is going to be that they use. And it's usually a standard size. I should have it memorized, but I don't. I think it's like 1 by 2 inches or something like that.
I don't know. I just
but just know that will be placed somewhere on the back cover or the jacket, and that you have to know, you don't want to put anything important there that it could cover up, or just, you know, let the designer know where you'd like it placed. And same with the bylines. I think we discussed that as well, but you need to, I mean, the designer will be the one who puts the bylines down, which is the author and the illustrator names, or if you're the author illustrator, it's just your name. But you should be able to give a little bit of feedback, and like you can just draw, like you said, lines or just some placeholder text where you think it would look good. And it might get changed, but at least you've planned a space for that where you can see it. That's the most important part.
This is when you're thinking like a designer. You're making the whole cover, even with the title as you imagine it and the bylines, you're making it look good, like
a cover.
Those samples out.
And so when you send it, you can send a mock-up version with your title and your placeholder text for the bylines, but just know that the designer may go in a totally different direction. And it's okay. It's don't take it personal, but just leaving that space for the text that you know needs to be on the book is enough for the designer to work with and take it in. But a lot of times what's happened to me, the illustrator will submit the cover with the title text and the bylines. That it inspires me to go in a different direction than I was planning on going. And a lot of times that's because their art, the way they planned their art around that title placement. So I kind of have to go in that direction, but still it's still useful to show where you think things should be.
So don't get offended if they don't go with your layout and your title, your lettering. Another question that you had gotten is, should we do hand lettering for the title?
And that
you had a few episodes.
I've had a few who've done hand lettering, and they
insisted on it.
That was rough. And as a designer, in self-publishing, you don't have as much control over sometimes because you're dealing with the author who's funding it, and then the illustrator who's being paid by the author, and so it can get a little sticky. So if someone insists on hand lettering, then you have to work with what they hand lettered, and sometimes it turns out wonderful. but I don't think you should do hand lettering unless you are really confident with it and you've done it before many times. Like, this should not be your first attempt at hand lettering should not be on a cover that you're submitting. Like,
But I say try it, right? I
yeah,
mean,
it's worth
try it,
trying.
put it there in the mock-up. You're like, oh man, this would be so cool if it's a tree and the title it's like a branch or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Try it. And
If it works,
you know,
great.
the designer will be like, yeah or no. And then that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, at least
Yeah.
you gave it a try, because you're not going to get better at it unless you actually try it out a few times.
True. Yeah, that's true. So I think that covers
Yeah, we did that.
covers.
Yeah.
We talked about gutters and margins. This is for the interior. I
Yeah, the
think.
interior also has, we everybody knows, avoid the gutter, avoid, don't put anything in the middle of the page where, I mean, in the gutter.
Not everyone knows that, Olga.
So we have talked about it. I mean,
I know.
okay, if you're listening for the first time,
You should
don't know what
know.
a gutter is. The gutter is where that's in the middle of the spread where the book binds. So when you
Yeah.
open the book, there's like that fold in the middle
Mhm.
that, where things get lost. There
They
should be a story
do.
about the things that got lost in the gutter. There you go.
Yeah.
Make a book out of that. I
Yeah.
fell into the gutter.
Yeah, because it eats like a half an inch of your art basically, because it's just like folded in there. But that's, well, I mean, it will affect it if you have a single page, but it affects it the most when you have a spread that goes across both pages, and then the center fold will eat it. But I have had people where the art, they have it on a single page, but they had like part of the art like too close to the gutter, and it just, we lost a foot. So I'm like, oh, can you move them over a little bit? And that, thankfully I was working with the illustrator, so we could do that. But those are things you need to keep in mind when you're planning your art.
This is where working larger than the actual size works to your benefit, because you can always shrink things without losing too much of the,
Yeah.
without losing the quality of the, you doesn't get pixelated. So whenever possible, especially where you're working traditional, work larger than the page calls out for.
Yeah.
It's still in the same dimensions, in the same, if it's a square book, your drawing should still be square, but it can be larger than the page, so you can shrink it.
Yeah. But that's also part of the safe zone, or the margins. The margins should go all the way. You should have margins planned all the way around the page, just so I don't want any major art too close to the edge of the page, or falling too far outside the margins.
So this is where the bleed comes in. No one's saying, for example, we're not leaving a white border around.
No,
you're finishing, you take the color all the way past, but you don't put anything important. So you let the background color continue into that bleed section. That gives the designer room to move things around.
Yeah.
So let's talk about fonts. And this is actually a question that, I usually go for 15 when I am proposing a book for submission.
And it really,
inside. Sorry.
Yeah, the type of font you use will kind of influence the way it looks on the page. Like some fonts are a little more condensed, and they'll need to be a larger, it's a point size. They'll need to be a larger point size. The range they say is 14 to 26 points. But yeah, usually I try to stay around 15 or 16. But if it's a nonfiction book and there's let's say it's 1,000-word manuscript, it's like a lot of text. I will go down to 14 to 13, sometimes 12 if it's like more than 1,000 words, because you want to be able to fit. You have to judge it on how you're going to fit the text on the page with the art. So as an illustrator, you want to still put placeholder text. You need to, so you can plan your art around the text. Now, what the designer does after that, that's their choice. But at least you've planned it out and and it could be on a different, it should be on a different layer so that when you submit it, it's just the art, or they can take it off. But the type of font you use it will definitely influence the size it needs to be too.
So here we have a next question. Should you incorporate the text with your art? I would say if it's different. If you're submitting your own picture book, that you are the author illustrator, definitely the text has to be part of it, part of the dummy that you're doing.
Oh, that's not really what I
Yeah,
meant with this
but
question.
you meant as an artist.
No, I meant like should you make the text like weave in and out, like
Oh,
curvy in a
yeah.
circle, like in a spiral, like
Oh God, yeah, that reminds me. I think I've mentioned this before. That book that I hated so much to have to read to my kids. It was a
what?
spiraling
Oh, and you have
text,
to turn it to
and
read it.
I never ever finished that book. I never read the whole thing. I would
Yeah.
skip. I don't know why they did that. It
Yeah.
was so annoying.
I think you can do that if you want. But same with it's the same concept as hand lettering. If it's not something you've done a lot of, then I would, come up with other options. Like you can try it, but have other options as well. Because the designer may not go with that because it's not readable. It may not be easy to read.
I think on that a little bit goes a long way. Like
Yeah.
a nice soft curve that goes with the flow of, I don't know, leaves that are floating, and you want to, or an aroma of a dish, and you just want that to be a soft, but going all crazy in and out, between,
Yeah.
it's gonna, try reading it, because remember, these books are to be read to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets very annoying when it's too much.
Yeah. But I do think you should have the text on the page always as a placeholder when you submit, like just when you're planning out your art, for sure.
And this is again, you can submit it, but then it's approved by the designer.
Yeah. Yeah. We already talked about this. I don't know.
We're like super low energy today.
I don't
Well,
know.
this is a technical episode. Leave room for the
Yeah.
text on the
We already
page,
talked
and it's
about
been
this.
done.
I think this was I think these are
your initial notes.
I think it was the initial, and then I forgot to delete it. Oh, I don't know. Is there anything else? Color. That's another thing. Like you should find out what color profile they want you to submit in. Typically, yeah. You've been RGB, right?
Because I'm working on the iPad.
Yeah.
Now I'm finding that so far all the houses are like really okay with RGB, and they
Cool.
transfer they convert the files, which is nice. I still do it just to make sure that the colors are going to look nice.
Yeah.
I know more now to stay away from the certain kind of purples. They kind of turn a little bit gray when they go into CMYK. But the iPad, a lot of people are working with the iPad now, so of course you want to go with RGB until they get like a really nice CMYK profile that works well. But yeah, I haven't had a problem with submitting RGB files, and then the publisher converts them.
That's cool.
I also submit 350 DPI, because that's a nice big resolution for changes. And
has anyone ever asked you to go higher?
Not so far. 350 has been the highest I've had requests. I used to work 200, like coming out of when I graduated, 200 was the standard for print. Yeah, 200. Then it was like 300 after that, and then now it's 350.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know why. I guess is the technology, we're so used to things being sharper now, or have the ability. Back in the day, it was always like, make sure if you have enough, well, it was depending on how big you were going to go, like posters or things like that, it was TIFF files in up to 600, but not for books, not for small print.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I've had art submitted to me on 600, and I appreciate they did that, but the thing is that that's a big file. Like, I have to work with these like 30 to 40 pages of 600 DPI. It's huge.
And then
And it's
the
a
little
hard.
the hamster inside the computer can't keep up with it.
Yeah, my
with
computer
the
does not
gears.
like, so that's why I'm like, really, it's easier if they're just 350 400. If you want to go higher, you can go to 400, but it's really not necessary because the final files are saved at 350. And so even if you submit them higher, the PDF that I create for the printer is going to be downgraded unless the printer specifically requests
Now
the
we're
files
talking
be
about
the
digital
DPI be
files.
larger.
We're talking about digital files. If you're
Yeah,
working traditionally, it's how you scan it or the photographs
correct.
that you
Yeah.
take it.
And I think a lot of people do scan it higher resolution so that they can edit. They have more possibility for it's easier to edit it when it is higher resolution. And then they can shrink it if they need to. But if you scan it at 350, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to edit it or change it. I don't know.
So
Yeah.
this was a very technical episode, but I like that we can tap into your knowledge of this because you have a lot of experience working as a designer, and it's just like behind the scenes. You don't, it's not known.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable information to know. And if you can think of this stuff ahead before when you're designing your sketches to submit to the designer, you're going to be more successful at illustrating books.
Yeah. It'll save you a lot of steps.
A lot of changes. Yeah, a lot of changes. This is assuming that you're working with the designer at the same time.
Yeah.
If you have done the illustrations for a book that someone just paid you for the illustrations, and you're probably not even going to see this. Yeah.
But I mean, these are still
left.
things. Yeah, but these are still things you can think of even if you're not working with the designer. Like you're thinking of the future person who will be working on it when you're done. Like it's just.
Well, the idea is that that the books, even we always like make a difference between traditional and self-publishing, but that's because there are some differences. But self-publishing is getting so much better now because a lot of people are taking their time to learn, and they have access to better information that is out there. So whatever you can do to make your books better, then yes, do so.
Yeah. I think that's
all
it.
right. Yeah, there's your episode. Think like a designer.
And if you have any questions, let us know. We'd be happy to answer them in the comments or message us or whatever. We didn't cover
we should
anything.
do another send any questions to cover in episodes too. All right, drink another cup of coffee because I have super low energy today. This is so not me.
That's because you're planting trees.
I know. I'm so sore. I'm sitting here and I'm so sore. All right.
Sorry. Okay.
No, we're good. We're good. I had fun planting. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that information. It make us all better illustrators.
My pleasure.
We wish you all have a happy spring.
Yes. Yeah.
Go out there. There's sun out there. Go look at plants. It's good to be outside once in a while.
It's beautiful. Have a good day.
Happy drawing.
Bye. Bye.